Welcome back, audience. And we now begin the panel discussion of today's virtual conference. And the topic is threats to digital assets in a virtually connected world. And for this, we have a star-studded panel. Iqbal Singh, who's the Director Cloud Deployment, Nokia. We have Lakshmi Nair, CISA, CISM Managing Principal, Synopsys Software Integrity Solution. Ratna Pawan, she is the Transformation Director, Risk Advisory, Ernst& Young. Akshay Markande, Founder, Version X Innovation. Maitreya Buddha Samantre, MBCI, Practice Head, BCM, Incident Management and DLP, Digital Operations and Platforms, Wipro. And of course, the panel shall be moderated by Mr. Ajay Gupta, who is the co-chair Smart Cities Working Group IET, Future Tech Panel, and Head of Sales and Strategy at SCS Tech India. So over to you, Ajay.
Great. So threats to our digital assets are not new to us. But with more and more of informations being shared and stored online, we might be much more vulnerable than we may actually like to believe. The last year report suggests that cyber attacks on infrastructure were amongst the top 5 risks of the year. Not only that, but it is expected that the cost of cybercrime might reach to the tune of $10.5 trillion by 2025. These numbers are really alarming, don't they? So in order for us to have a better understanding of the impact that these threats can have, much more vulnerable than we may actually like to be. There's some info there. That cyber attacks on infrastructure were amongst the top 5 risks. Let's look at some of the cyber attack in recent past. So the first one, our very own Rajiv Chowk metro stations. It was hacked using a mobile phone to run porn clips on the display board. Very embarrassing. 14 years old Polish student hacked into the tram system in Poland. That derailed 4 trams and injured many people. In the third incident, hackers infected 70% of the storage data in DC police surveillance record. Fourth one, Ukraine suffered series of power cuts during Christmas back in 2015 following a cyber attack. DDoS attack around 2 years back in October hijacked a number of IoT devices that led to temporary shutting down of popular web services, including Airbnb, Amazon Web Services, Netflix, Zendesk, and many more. So as we continue to move towards a virtually connected and truly paperless business, making the various types of contents available anytime, anywhere, the threats are also increasing as well. So good afternoon and welcome to this panel. My name is Ajay Gupta, and with me I have got a superb panel as Adis introduced. I really feel honored and privileged to participate as a moderator for this panel. The topic that we have chosen to discuss is something which intersects and impacts each one of us in some way or other. And the topic is, as Adis mentioned, threats to digital assets in virtually connected world. Now, what is digital assets? Anything which can be stored electronically or digitally is called a digital asset. Maybe your photographs, it may be music files, videos, documents, ID cards, podcasts, mobile applications, or any multimedia contents, and so on. So with this context, let's go to our panel of experts and find out what do they have to say about this. So Lakshmi, let me start with you. Basic but very important question. Why security of digital assets are so critical? What kind of impact it will have on individual and also firm in case of a breach? Over to you, Lakshmi.
Sure. And hello, everyone. A very good evening to all. And first of all, thank you for having me here and to share some of these insights with you. And honored to be part of the panel, esteemed panel, and again, once again, part of the IFSEC conference this year. So, Ajay, I think you made very pertinent points when you in your introduction about what it could be if the digital assets are compromised, right? So today we are becoming more and more interconnected, and the more that we are interconnected, the level of digital infrastructure become all the more complex, right? And even at home, when we look at the number of devices, the digital assets that are connected today is not less than a 2-digit number, right? So with that is increasing all the more when we have moved to the new normal of working remotely, doing everything remotely today, right? So that also indicated a very interesting fact that I wanted to share from an IDC study that came out recently that says that there will be around 55.7 billion connected devices by 2025, right? So that includes anything which is digital in nature. So that includes the IoT devices that becomes the way, it could be the applications, it could be the devices, it could also be anything that are digitally connected, including the information that is sitting in your backyard, right? So all of this is pointing out to, okay, how large is the problem that we are looking at with digital assets, digital infrastructure becoming more and more complex today. As you rightly mentioned, with this complexity, we are becoming more and more vulnerable to cyber attacks as well, right? So, what happens when there is a breach, right? So, the cost of data breach, definitely that's important. And the recent studies by Poneman Institute indicates that the cost of data breach is around, average cost is around 3.92 million. That's happening. But then after a breach happens, what happens, right? So a breach happens, the time that it takes to move out of that breach is not less than 250 to 290 days on an average for organization. But for many of, I think the APAC numbers are even more scary. Nevertheless, so the question really is, the breach is not something that exists for 250 days. Once you come out of that, that's not over. There is a subsequent additional expenditure, additional cost that happened that organizations will have to incur in the next 24 months. And then even after that, for subsequent years, that would be like half of what you, or 1/3 of what you kind of experienced in the first year and the subsequent years. But nevertheless, there is a price that you have to pay, not just 1 year, the subsequent years as well, right? And also, not just the financial impact. So I've heard that's a very interesting study that came in the Times of India recently on an Infosys Interbrand study that revealed that around $223 billion is at stake when it comes to an impact to a brand when organizations having breaches, right? So the individual impact of our data being compromised, the individual impact of the financial loss that we have, that moves up to the organizations, and then the brand value that is getting impacted is much more than lasting than an individual or an organization-wide cost that breaches can cost you today, right? So with that, I wanted to turn it back to you, Ajay. I hope I was able to give you some realistic facts about what a digital asset breach could cost to organization and individuals.
Thanks, Lakshmi. So the message is very clear. We simply cannot afford to compromise on the digital asset security. Because if the breach compromises your data, I mean, as you rightly said, it may leave your account drained. It can permanently damage the firm's reputations. and cost you a fortune. So thank you, Lakshmi. I move on to our next panelist, Iqbal. So Iqbal, we are all going through a very difficult time for last 2 years or 1.5 years, right? And this pandemic doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Securing digital workspace is another challenge which most of the firms are facing at the moment. People have been working remotely, and that has resulted into a significant increase in the security threat. In one of the survey conducted by a leading security OEMs, they found that 70% of IT professionals said that they have seen an increase in security threats since the outbreak started, back in 2019. Also, 47% of them said they were concerned about employees working from home using shadow IT solutions. So, Iqbal, is the concerns for real? If so, please let us know what all is being done to protect the digital assets, which are mostly deployed on cloud nowadays. Are we doing enough? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ajay. So let me at the outset just set the context. So this fight between, or the cat and mouse game between cyber criminals and cyber security has been ongoing for probably 3 decades now, right? But in my assessment, in the last 2 years, the cyber criminals really seem to have upped their game. Maybe let's look at some facts. We've had some really high-profile hackings, especially in the US. Everybody knows about the SolarWinds hacking. It involved 9 departments of the US government. It involved 36,000 private companies and marquee names there. We had an incident with the JBS Foods. They paid a ransom amount of $11 million, right? We had the Colonial Pipeline issue in the US again. The pipeline was shut, I think, for more than a week, raising the price of fuel there on the East Coast, right? So, and there's a study which is conducted by Palo Alto's Unit 42, which studies cybersecurity and especially ransomware. They say the average cost of, or the average ransomware payment made has gone up from $115,000 in the 2019 to $312,000 in 2021. In fact, 2020, not even 2021. So that's a 171% YOY increase. I mean, imagine a company making a profit like that. So it's a very lucrative business, right? Add to it, today cybersecurity has come center stage. President Biden's, the day he takes oath in office, 20th January, amongst the first announcements he makes is strengthening the US cyber infrastructure. And he allocates $9 billion. When the US and the Russian presidents used to meet in the past, they would discuss arms reduction talks, maybe, Ukraine or trade talks. This time, they met in Switzerland on 16 June. And what did they discuss? Cybersecurity. So that tells you the importance of cybersecurity, the involvement of not just private players, also nation state actors, maybe via proxy, right? It's almost like it's become a way of waging a war today. I'm sure we haven't seen a major conventional war for the last several decades. Probably this is the future of warfare. So having said the context, thus, I would say that coming to the cloud security part, right? So as you said, everybody is moving to the cloud. Yes, there are concerns in the security of the cloud, but then I think the major cloud security providers are fairly mature and their security mechanisms and controls and checks are fairly strong, in my opinion, right? Having said that, the user needs to understand that the security in the cloud has a shared responsibility model. It's like security of the cloud and security in the cloud, right? So the infrastructure part, the hardware, etc., that's with the cloud provider, and the upper layers, that's from the application, data, operating system, etc. That's with the customer, right? So the customer needs to play their role. Secondly, the concept of prevention or defending your the so-called or really increased surface area to defend should encompass not just the infrastructure or the software applications. It should also include the users. That's often missed out, and of course the data part, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to dwell too much into the typical security measures that we take in the cloud, because I think most people know about it. I thought I will discuss a little bit more about the more recent threats. Having said that, let me cover some of the aspects which, are there in the cloud to take care of, right? I mean, if you see, the major causes for security breaches in the cloud have been misconfiguration. So it's actually a lack of training of the individuals which is causing this issue. And the cloud is a dynamic distributed virtual environment, and that's what makes it a little bit more challenging vis-a-vis what it was on premise, right? So of course, coming to the cloud, so security cannot be an afterthought. So security has to be baked into the design, right? You got to have infrastructure as a code and bake in the security policies and controls right at the design stage. So these are my learnings. I've been working in the public cloud for the last 4 years. And honestly, I am not a cybersecurity expert, but working in the cloud, taking approvals from so many cybersecurity officers in my company, I think I gained some amount of expertise on this. Having said that, having set the policies in place, etc., it's not enough. You need to have kind of a monitoring going on a daily basis. So the vulnerability scans, and today we have wonderful tools available which are cloud native, from the cloud providers like Azure, as Sentinel, as GuardDuty, AWS, etc. Then aspects like those red teams and blue teams, penetration testing. Then of course education of the users, the infrastructure you need to use, VPNs. You can't be using public Wi-Fi for connecting to corporate networks. And of course, data backup. So that's where most people go wrong, right? And the operating system updates and the security software being updated regularly. Then, of course, we need to educate our users not to click on the email attachments which are suspicious or unknown. You need to use multi-factor authentication. In fact, multi-factor authentication has found to be one of the most effective ways of defending your assets, right? And this is proven by a research study. Then, of course, you need to monitor the data exfiltration, the traffic going out of your network. That's something really important. And if you look at the SolarWinds hacking case, the hacking started probably in March 2020 or even earlier, and nobody got to know it. And the first firm which got to know was FirmEye, because FirmEye noticed data exfiltrating out of their network, and their red team tools for penetration testing were also stolen. So, and that's how they alerted SolarWinds. So this is a really important metric which gets overlooked by most people. Then, of course, the privileged account management. This is something which should be very, very carefully monitored. Firstly, it should be very, very miserly, given in a very miserly fashion to anybody, and on a need to know basis, and in a time-bound manner, right? And then, of course, the regular things like securing access to the remote desktop protocols, do the network segmentation, right? So even if he is able to get a foothold, the malware, he's not able to expand laterally within your network, and other things like data encryption, hard disk encryption, malware installation, etc. Training and education, preventing misconfiguration. So these are, I think, some of the major factors which you need to keep in mind, right? Having said all of this, even if you do all of this, let me tell you, there is no absolute security on the internet today. So the real strength lies in the ability to quickly respond to an incident. So you need to have very, very strong incident management processes. That's my learning. In fact, whenever I go to cybersecurity, they ask the same thing. We know that there's nothing absolute, but if you have a strong security incident response management process, we are okay. So at least you'll be able to restrict the damage and mitigate the incident, right? So having said this, now, I mean, I thought I will focus a little bit on the ransomware threat because most people think it happens only in the US. India, it doesn't really isn't much of a thing. Let me tell you, last year, Haldiram had a ransomware attack in July, and which was only revealed in October. And 10 days later, another mithai company, Mithas, they were attacked, right, with the ransomware. So it's not just the high-tech software companies, poor sweet-making companies also getting. So nobody is safe, right? So now, what are the sources of ransomware? Basically, it's software downloads, number one. Then, of course, insecure websites or fraudulent websites, malicious attachments, and then, of course, there's supply chain attacks. Now, the question is, how many of us know what to do if you get that ransomware note on your screen and it's locked? You can't do anything. So these are the kinds of education that you need to know. So, I mean, if you really study this subject, so they will tell you first step is isolate, disconnect it from the network or isolate it. Then is, of course, you need to figure out how the malware or the infection got in. And here, most companies would probably need help. They would need help from maybe teams which are competent in digital forensics, right? Maybe security firms, right? Then, of course, you need to check your backups if you are having backups in the first place, right? And you should not then be immediately accessing those backups from the infected infra, right? And then, of course, the million-dollar question: if you don't have a backup, what do you do? Do you pay ransom? So ideally, it's not to be done, right? There are other ways to do it. Even the US, I think there's a law which prohibits paying ransomware because you're only encouraging the criminals. So then you need to find ways. So there are, I'm not sure how many of us know, there are free decryptors available. So there is a consortium called noransom.org, which is a consortium of Europolice and the Netherlands police and several cybersecurity companies. Started with I think 4 companies to begin with 5 years ago. Today they have 170 partners. So you can go to the website and there are around, I think, 113 decryptors available for free. So these are kind of resources which we may not know. Then is, of course, an incident response firm. You may need to take their help. Assume the worst case that you're also going in for a ransomware payment. So you need to get assistance from somebody who's an expert on this. So this is where the incident respondent companies come into play. So they have these abilities to know, firstly, what is the authenticity of the attacker? Will he really give you a decryptor? Will the decryptor really work? And they're able to bring the price down, etc. And of course, cyber insurance. So cyber insurance also engages these security firms, and as a result, that is the first port of call when you go there. So I think these are the scenarios, and with the US administration, I would say, now acting tough in the recent past with the message to Russia. So some of these operators, so to speak, have shut down, like Revil has shut down in recently, I think 3-4 weeks back, right? So that was supposed to be operating out of, or claimed to be operating out of Russia. And now people or these operators are moving towards cryptojacking. So these are the kinds of threats which are evolving, and I think there's got to be a continuous learning process, and nobody is safe. You got to be on your toes all the while and do all that you're supposed to be doing, and then hope for the best, right? I think that's it.
Very good, Iqbal. I think wonderfully explained, and you brought in a number of new informations for all of us to educate, whether it is no ransom org, decryptor, cyber insurance. So I think all this will be helpful. At least I wasn't aware of some of these terms. The good thing is that you mentioned that major cloud providers are mature, and so our data, our applications are safe with them. But I think at the same time, end user or customer has to play a role also, right? So well taken. Well, I think beautifully explained, Iqbal. Thank you so much. Now we go to our next panelist, Okay, Ratna, let me come to you for this another very interesting questions. This is something which touches our day-to-day life. Now, I just will take a 1 minute to give a context and why this is so important. I've included this in this conversations because almost a third of the total global population use a smartphone nowadays. Mobile has been one of the top mega trends in India also. We have seen telco offerings very cheap, ubiquitous mobile services. 95% of the population, Indian population, is covered by 4G. And what is the charges for the data that we pay is probably the cheapest in the world. $1.5, which is almost like 100 rupees a month. Additionally, 1.3 billion people have got their digital identity to carry digital transactions. So there is explosion of mobile phones that has resulted in explosion of digital services, whether it is bill payments or authentication services, video conferencing, OTT, or other multimedia services. Now, India's consumer digital economy, which was pegged at around 85 to 90 billion in 2020, it is expected to become 800 billion USD by 2030. Very encouraging number, but at the same time, it also scares us. Can you shed some light on what are the steps being taken to make these digital transactions foolproof and secure? Ratna, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Before I go to my response, a quick disclaimer from my side. Whatever I share in this platform are my opinion only from my understanding of the subject matter, and I do not represent my organization when I speak, what I speak. Coming to the response, and very topical, Mr. Gupta, and I think you made my job very easy, and Iqbal, before before me who responded, who made my job even more easier by giving half the response I had in mind. But coming to the point, digital transactions are pervasive, like you mentioned, in today's connected world, which can be attributed to technological advances, the internet penetration, mobile phone usage, as you spoke, the online payment adoption by customers, innovative solutions such as the UPI, IMPS, wallet integration, and I think most importantly, the need to move online post the pandemic. Correct. The advantages of going digital are just too many to ignore, which is, as we all know, the ease of use, it saves us time, the accessibility, the sheer convenience of it, it's cost effective, etc., etc. No wonder then that governments and policymakers in most countries are trying to create a conducive environment for it, and also trying to transform the country into a cashless economy, which makes sense, right? I read a report recently which said that at the end of 2019, almost 74% in UK and 75% in US, people used mobile devices to manage their finances. So, and that's huge, right? However, we all know that the threat landscape has also grown dynamically as an unintended effect of this progressive momentum. This warrants, of course, that all of us as stakeholders involved in this digital ecosystem join hands and try and curb the growth of these frauds and attacks. Now, typically, there are a myriad set of risks and issues on the digital platforms. But if I was to kind of bring them all together under three broad subheads that I thought would be relevant here, I would put them into first, no guesses, the cybersecurity frauds, which is the account takeovers, the identity theft, the card detail thefts, the triangulation frauds, the mobile malware related issues, which is viruses, trojans, rootkits, spyware, the works, right? The second is the other related security risks, which encompass SIM swaps, the poor app design itself, configuration and corrupt apps, fake or similar interface applications, the poor security of the Wi-Fi networks itself, mobile device ID vulnerabilities, and so on. So all of these can be clubbed under the security risks as such. And the third category I can see is the financial frauds. The perceived increased risk of money laundering and terrorist financing, the unauthorized deductions at a more grassroots level from the wallets of customers, right? Some of the challenges in this ecosystem, if I were to think of, would be firstly the challenge around the fraud detection, enforcement, and investigation. Second would be the cross-industry or expertise collaboration, which while is making a lot of progress now, still has some way to go. The third and more unfortunate one, according to me, because I'm from the risk industry, is that while the pandemic seems to have corrected a lot of it, security or any risk related cost is still looked as an overhead and not really as an investment, right? The next is privacy related laws that kind of restrict some aspects, and the sixth one would be the real organized criminal involvement, and I think Iqbal mentioned that they are making huge strides ahead, and it's risk professionals and the industry is just playing catch up, and I hope they're playing catch up at a good phase, and we're trying to. But the next part of your question that you mentioned were how do we make it foolproof, and I'm just going to kind of repeat when we say that really nothing can be foolproof in the digital space, right? We can only try and ensure that we do our best, and that's a repetition again, and then hope for the best. Now, even before organizations, industry, regulators, and all of them are trying to put in the right focus on this, a lot of the responsibility in this space needs to be taken by users, because at the end of the day, as the user, I am the owner of the data, I am the one who's going to face the direct loss, right? So some of the precautions, the responsibility is my own and my own only. I can't pass on that responsibility to anybody else. So for example, it could be as simple as if if I want to use a banking app, I should go to the bank's website and find it on the app section of the bank website itself and not anywhere else. Avoid using public Wi-Fi for doing mobile banking transactions, right? Instead, if required, if I'm outside, I need to do a mobile banking transaction, I could possibly use cellular data, but never really the public Wi-Fi. Update the bank app regularly so that the security upgrades are factored. Adopt multi-factor authorization. Before me, my co-panelists have spoken about the advantages of multi-factor authorization. Next, do not store passwords and pins on your phone. May sound very simple, but a lot of risk, vulnerabilities, and issues have happened because these simple little steps have not been taken. Finally, password, protect your phone and choose complex password, change your passwords often. So these are some of the things that we can do to try and ensure that our data from a user perspective can be safe, right? Moving on to what the industry per se is doing. The industry per se recognizes the threat, also recognizes that the digital economy and transactions are here to stay. So around it, the security provisions and investments need to grow. So the industry is obviously investing to strengthen the cyber security controls, which covers both obviously the network and application security issues and vulnerabilities, right? Complying with all the necessary regulatory standards, and the regulators across the world, especially, I'm from the financial services industry, so I understand that space better. But the financial services regulators are very, very stringent on matters such as these, because it not only leads to financial loss, but it leads to huge amount of reputation loss and so on and so forth, which is and a lot of it can be avoidable if the organizations and the users kind of do their bit. So it could be standards like the PCI DSS and so on and so forth that organizations are trying to ensure that they adopt and adapt to really. Additional controls are being deployed as much as possible in terms of ensuring consumer alerts through SMS and email whenever there is a transaction, online active activity logging and behavioral analysis. By the way, a lot of AI machine learning is being used for all of these behavioral analysis and using them back. Continuous vigilance and suspicious activity monitoring and tracking to ensure that any of these are thrown up, and there are teams inside organizations who analyze this and reach out to customers and so on and so forth. Then offering aspects like tokenization. For the uninitiated, tokenization happens when a program converts the payment data into random string of numbers and acts as an extra layer of security, with protecting therefore the customer payment data really. And then offering 3D security, which is again an extra layer of authentication that is administered by the cardholder's bank, and this is being adopted by a lot of the payment service providers and so on. And there are a host of others really. I could keep going on and on about this, but I think I would like to kind of summarize this by saying that nothing new really, and my co-panelists have already spoken about it, but just at the cost of repetition, digital transactions are here to stay, in fact grow. Mr. Gupta just mentioned some really strong numbers. What we need to do is to ensure that as users, as industry professionals, as risk professionals, and as organizations who are offering these services, whether it's banks, whether it's other organizations offering digital transactions and digital assets, we just need to up our game, constantly be on the alert for suspicious transactions, be on the alert for risks lurking, which are probably not visible today but could come and hit us tomorrow. So we all need to be really doubly alert and be aware that just because it's not happened right now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but keep preparing, keep investing in risk, and investment in risk at the end of the day is an investment and not really an overhead. And I think I've spoken enough on this, Mr. Gupta. I'm going to go back to you with this.
Thank you, Ratna. Great insight. So the takeaway where, stay alert, need to up your game. And I think in nutshell, you wanted to convey that you have to be one step ahead of the hackers. So all these guys who are there to, breach our system, right? Thank you so much. So with this, we go to our next question, which is, now Maitra, I'll come to you. The question for you, Maitra, is related to the, the cyber incident. What we are seeing that any cyber security incident in a firm is blamed to these poor guys who are CSO, ISG, or all these security experts. It is often believed that, the accountability of security lies with them only. What kind of role employee must play to ensure that these types of threats are minimized? Shouldn't be there, regular practice to sort of train or retrain to educate employees on these security awareness in a firm?
Ajay, thank you, IFSEC, for the opportunity. And to start with the disclaimer, as Ratna has earlier mentioned, like whatever views would be expressed, that would be purely personal, and it has nothing to do with my organizational affiliations. So I think one common aspect that has come out clearly from our panelists is that we all are living in a VUCA environment, vulnerable, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, wherein uncertainty is the only certainty, and probably knowing how to live with this insecurity is probably the only security. Now, in this VUCA environment, what we need to protect? We need to protect our assets, that is people, property, information, reputation, and environment. Now, one of the significant threat to this asset is cyber attack. So now the issue is experiencing this cyber attack is not a matter of if for your organization, it's a matter of when. Because we clearly understand that the cyber hackers, they continue to show an abundance of motivation. I mean, the thing is that they need to be successful only once to see a payoff for their efforts. But from our perspective, being part of those cyber resilience team, we need to be alert all the time, every time, and we need to manage those attacks in a successful manner. Now, how we can protect our information assets? first and foremost thing is that we need to have an enterprise cyber resilience framework based on the resiliency by design model. Now, in order to execute this, you need to have a resilience task force whose responsibility is to build resilience within every functions of the department, not just in the organization, but within your partner organization as well. So this resiliency largely depends on the awareness of your staff. They need to be made aware of the threats, the risks, challenges, and as well as the solutions. And those things will be provided by the resilience task force. They need to be explained like what are the cyber, they need to understand like cyber threats are not just an IT problem. These are people problem. These are business problem. Internal, external system users ultimately are accountable for this overall security situations. They need to be explained like how to stay vigilant to the social engineering ploys. But the problem really is that if we realistically make a critical assessment, then we'll find like most of the organizations, they generally invest heavily in beefing of their infrastructure, cyber infrastructure that includes their VPNs, encryption, your antivirus software, scanning, patching, whatnot. But the question is, how much are they investing in their people? We are concerned about the patching of the technology. Are we concerned about patching of our people? A recent report, I was going through it a few days back, it was showing like most of the organization last years, they have this security spending have increased to 10%. But the number of breaches, they set a record hitting a level greater than the previous 15 years combined. So if we carefully observe all those incidents, all those breaches, then we'll find that most of the cases are attributed to human error. Now, in this people process technology triad, human error is the top reason for the breaches. So there was a study by one group called Cybernic. Are primarily attributed because of this human error. And the next biggest cause of the vulnerability is like you need to upgrade your patches, upgrades and all those things. They constitute the 14% of this thing. Now, coming to the second part of your question, that is like what kind of training that an employee should undergo while getting onboarded. Certainly building a resilient workforce, the process should start from the hiring process itself. I was thinking like, let me start from the process of when we're highlighting the JD, job description. Maybe in the job description, one aspect that talent acquisition team can think of adding is a statement like knowledge on basic cyber awareness. So once we put that statement on that, then it is expected that candidate will additionally prepare himself or herself related to such queries in the interview. Now, when that person will come to the interview, many times we can find that in some of the organizations, they go for this aptitude test prior to the physical interview or face-to-face interview. So in that aptitude test, generally we'll find questions related to your emotional quotient, your personality, how you will be able to manage the team and all those things. But we can certainly think of putting a little bit of dose of cyber basic hygiene aspects as well, so that it would be helpful. Now, once the process of interview starts, then the hiring managers should also check on the candidate's basic cyber hygiene capability. Now, once the person is selected, this BGV process generally kicks in. So in the BGV process, generally we go for various kinds of checks, criminal checks, your educational checks, drug test and all those things. I really don't know, in criminal check, whether we give importance to the cyber criminal offenses as well. If not, then probably those aspects needs to be taken into considerations as well. Now, once the onboarding process starts after the selections, when we go for this new hire orientation session for this new joinees, then due attention should be given, due coverage should be given to the cyber hygiene aspects as well, because many times we'll see most of the folks, they will keep on talking about the organization, various aspects. They give hardly time for this basic security, risk management, compliance kind of aspects. So those kind of aspects needs to be given. Colleague is onboarded. When he or she will be serving the probation period, that time certain mandatory courses needs to be carried out. Like say, for example, your code of business conduct, your information security violation, kind of modules on data privacy, modules on social engineering, password policy related aspects, social media modules, cybersecurity employee guidelines should be clearly documented. And when I'm saying the colleagues, I'm also involving the contractor staff as well, because they also need to undergo this kind of trainings. Now, to test the efficacy of those trainings, whatever they have imparted, we need to go for the social engineering simulation kind of test on a defined frequency, just to understand like how prepared these people are. And it should be a part of our continuous improvement efforts. But remember, better to know about a potential breach as soon as it happens. So we need to make sure that we are creating an environment where sharing is encouraged and avoiding a situation where someone tries to cover up their mistakes and makes a risky situation even worse. Having said that, despite all those trainings and all those spending on the people patching aspects and all those things, even then also, there is a possibility that breach will happen, and we need to be prepared for this, and we need to be always on the toes. Ajay, over to you. I think I was able to convey.
Yeah, fantastic, Matra. I think, so you explained about having a resilience task force at the functional level in the organizations, right? And apart from the infra, there has to be investment on the people also. I think, very important point, which is, often missed by the employers or organizations, right? So thank you so much, Matra, for bringing these points. Okay. Akshay, sorry to keep you waiting. Now, finally, coming to you for another very interesting questions. So this topic relates to, we have been hearing about, the wire transfer fraud and ransomware, and all the panels have spoken about it. So these financial related fraud we consider as being most critical threats, but this is much more wider than we thought initially. Like in the beginning, I talked about metro stations breach, or tram system, or police department, and also data from online business getting hacked. This list seemed to be too long. What are the most serious of threats that you see right now? Akshay, over to you, as per you.
Okay. Hi. Good evening, everyone. So typically, I think a lot of things have already been covered in the forum today. So I will probably just take a little bit of a different approach to the discussion, so that everybody benefits from it. So essentially, what a cyber attack does is no different whether it's a metro station, whether it's a home network, or whether it could be as something as simple as my home PC versus something as complex as a satellite launch. Now, end of the day, the technology portions remains the same. So you would typically have a database, you would typically have a network. So I think their infrastructure kind of is common. So I would not, like, let's say, would specifically say about metro or a power station hacks. I think they are kind of similar. If you can breach into one, you can breach into others. The only difference between what matters is the infrastructure that you have, how powerful you're protected through firewalls or those patches and stuff like that. So that being that, for me, a cyber attack typically falls under many aspects. So when you talk about a social engineering attack, right, now that same attack could be carried out for a metro station, could be carried out for a corporate network, or could be carried for anything. So I would not bracket it in any specific areas as such. So I want to cover some of this I'll cover some of the topics here, I think, because most of us has already spoken, so I don't want to sound repetitive on that. So in the current scenario, I feel the social engineering attacks has gone up. Essentially, also, I think general cyber attacks have gone up because of two reasons. I think most of us are coming online. Also, the way the rewards or the benefit can be reaped is also now illegal. So, for example, if I were to do let's say a cyber attack, right? If I would want to go to a cyber attack, I'm capable. As an individual, I'm capable to do. So if I have to now blackmail a company, or ask some company, fine, I've got hold of your data, you pay me $1 million. Now, to do that, earlier I had to share my bank account details. Now, as a person sitting in India, now I don't have an access to dodgy bank accounts and Cayman Island bank accounts. I can't do it even though I'm capable. But now I think that's become easy. I'm sitting at home. I will hack my company's network itself and say, give me 10,000 cryptocurrencies. Otherwise, thank you. So even to demand money, we are capable now in the current infrastructure of things, how they're shaping up. Also, I think with the advent of this whole AI and machine learning. I think these bots have also done a lot of engineering on our behavioral patterns. So even this phishing attacks, the baiting attacks, these kind of attacks have become very complicated and sophisticated. So you would virtually feel as if there is nothing wrong with it, but end of the day it will end up stealing your password, your proper information, and things like that. So it is gone sophisticated on that side. So though these activities was happening earlier also, I think it is now increasing and the reach has become deeper, and the rewards are becoming more practical for people to reap in. So I think, of course, and the whole thing is moving ahead at a much larger pace. And people generally don't have sympathy toward larger organization. In fact, they take pride into breaching and then things like that. So unless they get caught and things like that, I think it's difficult. Also, what has happened over a period of time is the hardware in general and the software in general become easier to reach, have become more generic, has become more powerful. So, a lot of people can carry out these attacks sitting at home as well. So that's also something which is adding to all of these stuff. Now, specifically, let's say when we talk about phishing attacks, these are, I think everybody knows what they mean. Just try to steal your information through, impersonation of information. Same thing with some kind of baiting attacks. They are kind of same. So what also happens is somebody, let's say, sends you an email, say you share your address, we will going to ship you a free USB drive. So typically, I think we all know when you get a USB drive, we'll want to end up putting it somewhere. Put it in our home network, put it in my own laptop, put it in my office area. Office in general are still well protected because you put a USB, they will deny that access, right? But in my home, my own home PC, if I put the drive, it will do whatever it has to do. So that is something that people use to advantage. Nothing has changed except for the volume of it or the smartness of it has changed over time. Third-party attacks, my vendors, my third-party softwares, you take vulnerabilities from that and then, get into the system. And then they, of course, if they look for weaknesses in the system and then they do whatever they need to do. Cryptojacking is another thing which is picking up now. Cryptojacking typically is a mining process in which how the, people get paid. So there's nothing wrong in mining. But crypto mining or cryptojacking would result, just to clarify how this works. So typically when I say, somebody wants to do a cryptocurrency exchange or a transaction. So what happens is these people who would come back with the valid transactions cases, and this is a valid transaction, they get paid for performing that check. So it's like a blockchain which is spread over many computers. So whichever party comes first and say, okay, fine, this is the result, they get paid. Now, these are heavily dependent on how many PCs or how many computers are helping them to do this kind of mining or this kind of processing of the information. So now these people gain access and then they're not doing anything except just using your computer resources like your CPU and stuff like that. You don't even realize getting is happening. Sometimes you just feel like jitter, oh, my PC is running slow for half an hour, things like that. So they're I would say threatful that way, but yeah. So this is a way of people making more money using somebody else's resources. So that is typically a definition of a cryptojacking. Just trying to clarify a few of those things so it helps. A cyber physical attack is something which is more relevant to what we're talking about, where the physical infrastructure is put on hold. So there are railway lines or oil grid and things like that, where these systems are generally used to valorize the actual physical devices. So IoT attacks is another kind of threat that is there. I think you already know about, there are many, it's about 75 billion, like how the number was put. Devices going to come online over time. I think most IoT devices are not very secure. They are gateways to almost everything in your house and things like that. So of course that is also something which will, now this is right now not in forefront, but this is as the time goes up, on, these are sitting ducks which would be exploited by most people to gain whatever information that they gain to. A DOS attack, I think, is everybody knows. A DDoS attack, is very common stuff. So where this kind of attacks are carried out by generally competitors, I would say, because these are attacks which are done to disrupt a service. So if let's say I am in Amazon, right, I want to bring Microsoft some service down, for example. So I would want to do that attack and push in so much of data through the IPs or the network that their service becomes non-rendable. So these kind of stuff are also happening directly from a competitors to disrupt the service or the other business. So more of a business to business, nothing harmful but denial of service attacks. Cloud vulnerabilities, of course, are exploited, but I think I tend to still believe that the cloud is the far safer way, going forward as against our own on-premise network, because we definitely cannot beat the the advancement or the research or the infrastructure or the knowledge that goes into securing a cloud infrastructure versus our own private or corporate networks. Because for example, Google spends close to multiples of magnitudes of, in fact, almost close to $1 billion in only securing the cloud infrastructure, the R&D, the infrastructure, the engineering team. We cannot match that kind of infrastructure no matter what we do. So generally, cloud vulnerabilities exist quite a lot. People try to exploit those things, but still, I would say cloud is the best way to go. Another kind of attack is a man-in-the-middle, very common attack where people try to latch on to the information in between. So using if you're a Wi-Fi network or any network, I could listen to whatever communication that is happening. Those kind of attacks are also common. There are so these are general attacks, but in a kind of a new wrap, I would say, in a new wrapper where they are exploiting the advantages of technologies, but the attacks are still, from a nature standpoint, are still kind of old that way. Some of the newer ones I would think, which are not yet prevalent but are going to become pretty prevalent, would be something like there is a mesh network that goes out, right? It's a public network. If you look at most Amazon devices in last Echo devices, Alexa devices, they are shipping with a 900 megahertz radio. So now that they had not disclosed earlier, now these are getting shipped with the devices. Now what they can do is they can transmit a little bit of data to about half a mile radius. Right. So now what they are doing is these would be used to then communicate with some other device. So let's say you have a lock or you have a CCTV camera. Now these network would transmit data across. So when you say half a mile, that means almost every house which have an echo dot then can transmit this across multiple of kilometers, right? So as long as you have a house next to your house or even next to your house, all this can communicate to each other. Now, these are something new. Of course, there is right now not too many hacks, but we will see a lot of trend happening on this side. Smart tags, another thing I think Apple has recently launched, Samsung had. So these are tags which are used again on a public network or on a mesh network to identify the location. Again, this is just starting, so you would see more hacks coming on along the way. Cars, for the other example, when we have more autonomous cars, we will see these kind of trends coming forward. One major thing which is of my personal favorite is the quantum computers. So I think quantum computers, when they come to the main market, whenever it will happen, maybe in 10 years or 5 years, we don't know. So they are so powerful. I think most of the encryptions that we talk about today, right, is actually useless, because how encryption works are when you try to decrypt something, right? A 256-bit encryption or a 520-bit encryption would take, let's say, about 100 years for a supercomputer to even breach, right? So it is still breachable. It is just that the time to compute that kind of information just takes too long for it to have any sense, But with quantum computer, that all will change. In fact, a quantum computer can decrypt even 1,000-bit encryption in a minute's time. So when we are getting into that kind of realm, I think there is no encryption that can save us. I think whoever has that technology would or could be able to penetrate, I think, everything with the brute force. I think there's nothing that can stop. These are some of the things that I would think are more modern, or you do see with the time to come. And I think rest are the older things which I just covered, which are more wrapped around in a newer technology realm. So that is what I had to say about this.
Sounds very scary, Akshay. I mean, you shared like variety of spectrum of the threats and attacks, and thank you for sharing all those insights. It seems these hackers or attackers, they also keep innovating, and they always try to stay ahead of people like us, or the security folks.
I think without them, so I think we won't exist, right? So it's only if they attack we put a defense, right? So I think we exist because of them. So I think all our jobs at stake if they don't attack. So
absolutely. I think we have done well, Adish, in terms of managing the time. Let me thanks everyone, all the panelists. So, just as the concluding thoughts of what we have seen
maybe, sorry, Ajay, for interrupting. Maybe we can take a couple of questions from the audience before you come up with the concluding thoughts from all the panelists.
Oh,
right?
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, because although there are not too many questions as of now, maybe, we are at the fag end of the day, but I could manage to pull off two questions which are relevant for this panel discussion. So, this is by Pish Rijesh, and he says, how effective are digital risk protection strategies against data privacy breaches? Although I think it's a very niche question, but I'm sure this esteemed panel, somebody would like to take it up.
Maybe Ratna, the risk expert.
No, I can only claim to know. So, from a privacy perspective, what I can say is that if there is a breach, then your privacy is obviously breached. So, any kind of digital breach, according to me, is going to be a direct breach of your, as we say in the privacy language, a breach of either your PII, which is your personally identifiable information, which can identify you as a person, or SPI, which is a sensitive personal information. So any kind of breach will definitely target these. So, and I think so many of our panelists before me have already said that there is only one way and one way only to avoid it, and that is to avoid the breach in itself.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else who would like to add his thoughts to this?
Just an interesting aside on this data privacy thing. I was just reading, I think it was a snapshot of a chat between a hacker who would, lock the data, the ransomware, and the victim. And he says that, in Europe, because of GDPR, our victims pay immediately. They don't want to be named and shamed. So that's the flip side of it.
Yeah.
Just to add an interesting point, right? We have been talking a lot about prevention, or rather we talk about monitoring aspect of it, right? So the point about the strategies, right? Strategy is also about proactively planning this. That also looked up to some of the interesting aspects of how do you build security systems, secure engineering practices when it comes to the applications, the devices that we are building in today. How do you build in the privacy by design concept into the overall secure engineering practice today? Those are some of the aspects that I could really think of, because having a strategy, having these aspects built into your overall build process is going to help in preventing or managing risk much better.
Absolutely. I would just like to, kind of end this with something that we've already covered by, I think one of the panelists did. Security by design is the key here. And that's the answer to everything. It cannot be an afterthought. That has to be built at the onset of anything that we do.
All right. Thank you. I think we'll take this one final question by Sujit Kumar, and this is in reference to the safe city infrastructure. So when safe cities and smart cities, the term we interchangeably use when we talk about securing smart cities. So he says that do you think we can ever have a fully secure IT infrastructure in place to ensure intelligent security monitoring?
I think the answer would be no. I think there could be many ways to perhaps mitigate this, but I think in a nutshell would be an answer. I think would be no. Somebody else can maybe talk more about it. So.
Let me add, so smart city and safe city, very close to my heart. This is what I have done in last 7-8 years. So from MOUD, there is a very strict guideline, and every smart city, 100 smart city which have qualified, in India, they have to follow, and they're very stringent. So if some of you have worked on the smart city, you will see that it has got some 7 layers right from the device to internal, external, and applications layer. So it is but again, as all of the panels have agreed and they have already said, that you can never have a foolproof, 100% foolproof system, because, the hackers and attackers, they keep innovating and keep thinking. But yes, what we can do, we should do to the extent possible.
Like what she said, that they keep attacking and we keep defending. So it's that goes on and on.
So just one thing I think I can add to this, if the question was about, when can we see something like this working, properly? I believe the humans are the weakness, I think. So what problem I think we pose is, no matter, as long as we have an admin who's doing the last bit of typing on the keyboard or last bit of login, I think that person himself or herself itself is vulnerable to attack, right? So no matter how much training or whatever we do, but as a human being, the last person responsible is still the person responsible. So I think if it all moves to machine interaction or a machine to machine communication, right? As we take away human aspect completely out, would we see a fair degree of safety? Otherwise, I think, the admin who has the key, the last person will always be vulnerable to everything else.
Yeah, I think just to add, so my thoughts are similar to what Akshay shared. So I think there was this incident in the US, I think in Florida City, the water plant was hacked and the water was poisoned, right? So that's a live example. When we think of security in the smart city, probably maybe none of us is thinking of this kind of an attack vector, right? And to me, the era of man in the loop for defending is over, right? I think we have to make use of new age technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data analytics. So based on a live security feed in real time, they should be able to identify patterns, threat vectors, and react. The era of signatures and identification and then and reactively reacting to that, I think, is over. So that as Akshay said, I think the only hope is when it becomes completely automated. Yeah.
And it'll be more
I would
computers, the quantum computers coming in, I think it'll be a different ballgame. So I'm personally very interested in seeing when that happens.
I would totally agree with Akshay and Iqbal. Just to add what I said already, that AI and ML based use cases, Iqbal. I mean, and you were spot on in saying that the feed will have to be analyzed by the machines with which is AI enabled. So I mean, again, the MOU they have given the list of 21 use cases which all the smart city will have to incorporate. But again, I would say this is just a set of use cases for pilot purpose. Now it has to evolve and cover wide range of spectrum. All right.
Right.
Thank you so much. Anish, any more questions we want to take?
No, I think we are good to go. Any final round of comments from anybody in the audience? All right, I think we are good to go, and would like to thank from the bottom of my heart Iqbal Singh, Lakshmi Nair, Ratna Pawan, Akshay, Maitre, and of course Mr. Ajay Gupta for moderating and managing it so very well. I think we had a very insightful discussion. I mean, it's a very vast topic, and to condensing into 1 hour is nearly impossible. But I think we had some few very important takeaways. The audience sure would have noted them down well. So,
I think one final comment, if I can give, I think I would just
please.
say that this is what we see just now is the trailer, right? The movie is not yet started.
Correct. So in our upcoming definitely. So in our upcoming webinars and sessions, we can build on it even further and go into more niche areas related to the subject. And to give a formal vote of thanks, I would now like to invite Mr. Sanjeev Rao. He's the Assistant Project Director of Security Portfolio at Informa Markets in India. So over to you, Sanjeev.
We can't hear you, Sanjeev.
Yeah, you are on mute.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah, fine now.
Am I audible now?
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Adish. I think I stand between a thoughtful day, a knowledgeable day, an insightful case study presented, a lively panel discussion, all of that. I mean, I think there are many key associations and panelists who have supported to make this day happen. Apart from all that, who have done it, some of the key associations who have supported us, like Midcat Advisory, IISM, and ACES Bengaluru, Mumbai chapters, GSCS, and Mumbai chapters. I would like to thank them for their help in putting this knowledge-driven sessions together. Also to all the panelists and presenters, keynote presenters who have come and shared their thoughts. Yes, Safe Cities is first thing which we did, and by looking at the way it is, I think it needs a lot more focus. That's what I was talking to Adish as well. Probably look forward to your support in the future as well. As you rightly said, picture abhi baki hai, so we hope this is the end of the digital lives and we get on to our physical lives. We definitely want to see you at our IFSEC, which is our parent show, which is going to happen in December. Definitely, there's a lot more exciting things to come to keep this community connected through our website, which would be shortly launched. Adish would all get in touch with you guys. We want you to be there and stay connected to the community, be part of the communication or discussion. And more importantly, I would like to thank all our partners who have made this day happen, West Indies, who are the platinum partners, Globus Infocom as gold partners, ESSL, Matrix, Comsec, Teltonica, and Heinrich as the exhibit partners, and many more who have been part of this session or throughout the day who have been an audience to or have given their ears and time to us to make this day happen. I would request at the end of the day, since the conference is coming to an end now, I would request you to also take time out to go and visit the expo floor, where you would find a lot more solutions. Some of them who are exhibiting for the first time, some of them path breaking, some of them who have solutions for real-time challenges today from the Safe Cities perspective, and interact with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
with
you.
that, with that, we come to the conclusion.
Thanks a lot, guys. Yeah.
Right. Thank you of this
Thank you.
panel discussion.
Thanks, everyone.
We look forward to meeting you again in future.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.